Hey, how's it going, Dragon Brood? We are trying something completely different today, and I'm going to take a match that I did and I'm going to do an actual play by play. It's something that's come up as requested on our stream the other day. People want to see kind of the logic and the mindset that goes into a lot of the plays and why I'm doing what I'm doing. Now, if you catch me on stream, I do actually talk through the plays a little bit, but I think they wanted something a little more in depth of me, like kind of scrutinizing myself a little bit. So we're going to see how that goes and I'm going to give it a try. So let's get to it. Okay, so as you saw in the title, this matchup's going to be me playing a Gruul deck. The latest version, I made some updates because the format's really changed. We moved from having so many kind of aggro. It was really kind of a weird split, right? We used to have like these serious aggro decks that were like Rakdos Knights, Mono Reds, that type of stuff. And then the really heavy blue white control decks on the other end. Well, both of those have kind of fallen off a bit, and things have moved more toward the center with kind of high impact cards with a bunch of mid rangey, kind of rampy stuff to get you to that point. So, with that in mind, we've changed up the deck a little bit and decided to take it into the ladder and arena with the new season. So, let's get into it a little bit. And this is where we ran into a, I guess you call it an Orzhov control deck with Doom Foretold. So this particular mulligan is fine because I have 3 land. I have the Robber of the Rich, so I have a good early play. I pick up another good early play, so we're totally good with that. The trick here is just deciding what you want to lead with, whether you want to lead with the Goblin or with the Robber of the Rich. And it really kind of depends on what we're up against. So here, knowing that they're going to eventually have another 2-drop in the way, this doesn't matter greatly because now no matter which one we play, we're going to play the Goblin with haste most likely. Knowing that even if it's a 3-3, we're not going to get any more damage through every turn. So we might as well just get the most damage we can get through early. The other interesting thing here, though, is that Klothys is a big play, the way this deck is built. And unfortunately, when they play the Agonizing Remorse, I was already thinking, like, oh man, this is it. They're going to get rid of it. And that's exactly what they took. I don't blame them. Knowing that this game was going to go long and they'd rather not use their Elspeth Conquers Death on it, I kind of knew that was a thing that was coming. So here we're just going to play the Goblin and get in for 2. And you kind of just leave the onus on the opponent here to try to figure out what they want to do next turn. Like, the biggest thing really though in this setup is once I identified the colors and realized they were playing control strategies, there's a good chance Doom Foretold's there. Now admittedly I don't know that at this point, but if I can keep multiple permanents on the table, Doom Foretold has less of an impact. And here I was feeling really good because I'm like, okay, cool, we have double Questing Beast even. So if they do play a Doom Foretold, we get to get in for 4 here. They play the Doom Foretold, sack a Questing Beast, and then I can play another Questing Beast. So like this is pretty nice. I mean, or the other option is sack the Goblin, play the Tectonic Giant, attack with the Questing Beast. So even the biggest thing I have, I can replace and keep the pressure up, which is a big deal. And here I like having the Giant because it kind of forces the opponent's hand a little bit. Is with them being so low, it's like, okay, well, now I have a thing that's always doing 4 damage, or a thing that's always doing 3 damage, or giving me the option to look for extra cards so that I can keep my board full and not be hurt by Doom Foretold. If they happen to target it, then they're also going to take 3 damage, or give me a card. So this is a pretty good situation right now. This I did not like. They had 2 very timely agonizing remorses, so I was a little perturbed by that happening. And this was actually a really tough decision because using the Tectonic Giant or keeping the Tectonic Giant out, it at least guaranteed I had the option to find additional cards, which was a big deal. So it keeps us ahead of the Doom Foretold. And the reason we had to play the land before the attack step here is if I chose to look at the top 2 cards with the Giant, if one of them was an Embercleave, I needed to be able to play it during the attack step to maximize our effectiveness. Unfortunately, we didn't find it. We just found a Dombri's Ambush, which isn't nearly as good here, but post-combat, it does let us actually remove the token. Yeah, and the reason we use Domri's Ambush on the Giant here is that it's likely the creature we're going to keep if the opponent decides to keep the Doom Foretold, but it also draws a bigger target to the Giant, so if they have an actual spot kill spell, turns out their only removal was Elspeth Conquers Death, so that didn't work out for us too well. Now, this was a supremely good top deck here because it allows us to attack for 2. If they don't have something that gets rid of it before our turn, then I actually get to sacrifice it to the Doom Foretold, and then I can just escape it out of the graveyard. So this is actually a really good setup. And that even depends on what we draw. I mean, it's possible we could have 2 things. Yeah, and at this stage, I knew the opponent was just fishing for cards. They were pretty hard up. I mean, if they're doing that during their main phase, taking the damage from the Castle Locthwain, you kind of knew they're in bad shape here. But they're not dead. I mean, they still have 1 more turn at the very worst, because I would sack it, get it back, attack for 3. They're going to be at 2 life, but they still have ways to kill the Phoenix. They still have ways to gain life. And then what's funny is we drew that Embercleave, and it was like, well, can't do anything with this, unfortunately. And I'm not sure why I debated possibly not playing the Phoenix there, but I'm pretty sure in every single case it's correct. Even with the opponent. I mean, because the thing is, on the opponent's turn, unless they have a kill card in hand, which if they did, they would have played it beforehand so they could get the benefit of their Doom Foretold. I'm going to get my 3 damage in, and they're just going to have to sacrifice their Doom Foretold, so they still have to find something to do with the Phoenix. Alright, so the Doom Foretold was gone, so that was nice. They did have an Elspeth Conquers Death, which is unfortunate, but we have a ton of haste creatures here, so I wasn't totally worried about it. Because you're talking about like 2 more Questing Beasts, you've got a pile of Gruul Spellbreakers, I think there's still 3 in the deck, you still have another 2 Robber of the Rich, so I mean lots of haste creatures. Unfortunately, we didn't find one, but we have a lot, and there's still 2 of the Zerta goblins in there, so tons of things we could do, and even just dealing 2 with the stomp from the Bone Crusher Giant. So there's a lot. The good news is they can't look for cards with their Castle Locthwain, so it's literally just what they draw off the top is all that's relevant, and they don't have anything good to get out of their graveyard with the Elspeth Conquers Death. So really, unless this 1 card in their hand is a spot removal, we're good, because their land, all it can do is make a 1/1, and that's not going to do enough. So they opt to draw a card and kill themselves. So we're on to game 2. And sideboarding, I think the only thing we really did was took out the Bone Crusher Giants and a couple of the Domri's Ambushes and brought in Return to Natures. You know, mostly if we just want to get rid of Elspeth Conquers Death for some reason. And I think that was it. We really didn't do a whole lot. Oh no, and I think we brought in the Anax, because if they brought in some sweepers, or if we want to sacrifice to a Doom Foretold, we can sometimes get 2 tokens out of the trade. And this was a really good hand. I was pretty content with this one as well. As much as we wanted to have double red, I felt like we are going to have 3 turns to draw a red source or draw another playable spell. So wasn't too upset about it. Being on the draw, this is a hand I think you have to keep. And then we got another Klothys, which obviously is a thing the opponent doesn't like for us to have in this matchup. I mean, for the most part, they only really have 2 ways, well, 4 copies, I guess, of Elspeth Conquers Death to deal with it. So it does limit their options. And then here, when you're playing against control matchups, you're almost always better served just getting in for 2. There's a few rare situations where you'll want to go ahead and put the +1/+1 counter, but more often than not, I'm just going to get in there for the 2 damage. Mostly because they don't have a lot of creatures. There's not a bunch of stuff you're going to need to trample over, or well, you don't even get to trample. So being 2/2 versus a 3/3 isn't going to matter much. I guess if they didn't put anything in the way or didn't sweep the board at all over the course of several turns, it would matter. But here, as much as I wanted to get more pressure on the board with an X, I really was thinking like, well, Klothys is a card that can do repetitive damage over and over and over the course of the game. The opponent only has 3 mana right now. So Elspeth Conquer Death isn't even an option. So like, how do we feel about this? And ultimately I settled on an Axe. I'm not sure really that was still the correct choice. The only difference is if they decide to play like a Kaya's Wrath or something, we would have got a couple of tokens and can keep fighting. In this case, they have a Devout Decree, which ultimately doesn't change much. Even if we'd have played Klothys, the only difference is we'd be getting 2 more damage right now. But, I mean, we knew we were going to play Questing Beast this turn either way, or want to. So it was already changing up the play. Though in hindsight, I think the way the deck's built could have been better served with Klothys, but we'll see. Now, the interesting thing is, because the opponent played this enchantment, they actually end up taking significant points of damage themselves. So, in a way, if we can keep them from being in a situation, like this is the one turn where if they had Doom Foretold, they could get ahead. If not, well, now they're going to be stuck taking damage every single turn, trying to deal with our creatures, because they're not going to have a good opportunity to get a Doom Foretold on the table to keep from taking their own damage. So this, in some ways, started to become the focus of my game plan. It's like, okay, we know we can get Elspeth off the table. Let's go ahead and hit the opponent for as much as I can. And notice I didn't attack with the Goblin here, which is funny because had I put the counter on the Goblin, it would have mattered now. But the reality is I didn't want to attack because if they did have Doom Foretold, you can only sacrifice non-token creatures or non-token permanents. So if we'd attacked and they double blocked and they play Doom Foretold, we lose our Questing Beast. Now, admittedly, they had an Elspeth Conquers Death, so it only somewhat mattered. But again, it's that if we can keep multiple things on the table, Doom Foretold loses its power. And then this I didn't mind because it was like, all right, now I can keep something on the table. If they do sweep the board or they play Doom Foretold, I have a trample creature. It's got haste. Like, this is a really good setup to be at this stage of the game. The only concern here is if Elspeth Conquers Death ticks up again, they could get the Elspeth back out of the yard. But if Klothys sticks, Klothys can just remove it. So again, we don't want to attack here because we don't want to get in a situation where we have to sacrifice our Klothys. As much as we're playing an aggro deck, this is a situation where you have to kind of understand where you're at that point in the game. Like, the narrative sort of changes a little bit for what your strategy is. Especially knowing that we have a Phoenix in hand and they have no flyers that they've shown us through 2 games. So I know I have at least 2 guaranteed damage at some point. If they don't get rid of Klothys, that's 2 damage. So now, barring whatever life the opponent gains, I'm really only having to find 2 more points. Though I'm also smart enough to know there's a good chance they're going to gain some life between now and then. Speaking of, the very next play was Oath of Kaya. Now, the good news is they didn't get max value off of it because they had to take a point themselves, so they only go up to 8 instead of 9. That still leaves them within reasonable danger range. Yeah, and the interesting thing is the opponent attacking here kind of told me that they had another removal card in hand because they know how many haste creatures we have. So it didn't make sense with them knowing that we were going to take the 2 life from them. The only real situation here would have been somehow if I could have played like 2 Gruul Spellbreakers and then they wouldn't be able to target them because they get hexproof on our turn. But here I figured if I can get both these into play and attack, opponent's going to go to 1. And then that puts us in a good spot. Unfortunately, the minute the opponent paused here, I'm like, oh, they do have the removal card. Which makes sense with the 2 creatures they attacked with last turn. Yeah, and that's the one that hurt because not only was it a removal card, it's a removal card they also gained life on. So that was a little tough at instant speed. The good news is, though, Elspeth Conquer Death goes off. There's nothing for them to return from the graveyard. So they don't get to kind of easily eke ahead here and get any value, which we were all about. And now we're also protected because if a Doom Foretold comes down or they decide to sweep the board, we still have the win. Which, of course, that changed here because now they're going to go back to 6. So it's like, okay, well, we have to find a little bit extra damage here. Yeah, and we're at so much life, plus the life we're gaining from Klothys, we weren't too worried about it. Yeah, the card here, as far as I can tell, they don't have anything to recurse up, so I just took the best card out of the graveyard. Now here it's like, okay, does the opponent have a removal for the Phoenix? They weren't able to exile it, so I was like, okay, well now I don't know if we could even lose. Because if they sweep the board, then we just get the Phoenix out of the yard. Or we just kill them with Clothis. If they get rid of Clothis, they still need a removal card for the Phoenix. So sitting on that Phoenix for a long time came through in the end, fortunately. It's arguable that maybe we could have done more with the Phoenix earlier, but it was good that we didn't put it at risk. So that's it. It was an interesting matchup. You know, I thought the second game obviously was much more entertaining than the first game because there was still a chance, I think, the opponent could have pulled a couple of cards and kind of made it a little more complicated. It was also interesting getting to play around some of their own things, finding ways to deal some damage to them. But I don't know if this is something y'all find entertaining or if something you want me to do more of. I can definitely do it. Actually, it was kind of fun to go back and look at my own match and kind of go like, oh, that wasn't necessarily the best decision, or like, why did I do that? But yeah, it was kind of neat. I would like to do more of it if y'all were into it. So yeah, let me know what you thought about the play-by-play stuff. And also, if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, why not? I'm putting out a lot of content right now, almost every single day, I think, for the last week. But yeah, definitely, please help me out. I'm trying to eventually get the channel monetized, so any bit y'all can do to either share it around to friends or just subscribe would be awesome. And give this video a like to let me know if you like this type of content. And if so, I will do some more of it. I'll even try to put some out next week. Otherwise, you can catch me on stream, usually on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays, 9 p.m. to midnight Pacific time. And yeah, it's over on Twitch, by the way. Otherwise, yeah, I think that's it. We will catch y'all next time.